Hey y'all, and welcome back to the Old Iron Talk podcast. I'm your host, Callie Gurton, and today we will be speaking with special guest Tyler Montgomery. He and his family have been collecting and farming with international tractors and combines for all of his life, so he is going to share his history, what he collects, and then give us a little tour of his stuff as well. But first, per usual, we're going to check in with Miranda. How's everything going, Miranda?
Oh, can't complain. How are you, Callie?
Not too bad. We do have some exciting news to share with everybody. Miranda finally got let out of jail, and she was allowed to go drive a tractor. So how was that experience for you?
Well, so I was just sitting under a tree, minding my own business, trying to enjoy my lunch, and along come you and some other people, and they're like, hey, here's your chance. We're going to teach you how to drive a tractor. So we found one, and you taught me what to do with it, and I didn't kill it
Oh,
and didn't wreck.
and you didn't kill anyone.
I didn't kill anyone, didn't run into anything. Might have went a little slow.
It was a little slow, but we'll get there.
Next time, though, I think I'll take it up a gear or two.
I think
so. It was fun.
Good.
Yeah,
Glad to hear it.
you're a good teacher.
Oh, thank you. I'll try, One day we'll move you up in the world, and maybe we'll try like a old, like 1930 gas tractor or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That might be pushing it.
Yeah, we'll get there. But yes, we're glad that Miranda has started, coming to our world. She finally learned how to drive a tractor, so we're getting somewhere with her. But today we are very excited to talk with Tyler. But first, I gotta ask Miranda our tractor joke of the week.
Oh boy, here we go.
So here we go. Why did the tractor sell medicine?
I don't know why.
Because it was a pharmacist.
A
A
pharmacist.
farm assist.
Oh, they just keep getting better every
They
week.
do.
They really do. You're just killing it with these jokes.
Yep, one of these days I'm just going to have a stand-up comedy bit of all tractor jokes.
I would buy the first ticket, front row.
Thank you.
I wouldn't heckle you at all.
All right, let's get talking with Tyler now.
Got it.
All right, so we're here with Tyler Montgomery today. And Tyler, I saw you were at Red Power Roundup. How was
Yep.
that?
Amazing is the shortest way to describe that. A sea of red tractors is another way to describe that. For me, being an international nut, it was a lot of fun. I got to take a couple tractors and a little skid steer as well, and those really drew a lot of attention. And I talked and networked with more people than I could count. It was probably the most fun I've had at a show ever. So.
Well, that's great. We were at Classic Green, so don't
Yeah,
think on
I,
us for
I saw
that,
some
but...
I saw some snaps from Classic Green, and I went to Classic Green in 2019 when it was in Grand Island,
Okay.
Nebraska,
Yep.
just for the fun of it, and it was a great show. So
It was an awesome show. We really enjoyed it. There was an extraordinary amount of D's, which that was a feature this year, but that was really cool to see. And the showgrounds and fairgrounds in Tennessee were awesome. So I'm glad that we went to. Okay, so you said you're an international nut. A little background on how you became so involved in the international world.
my great grandpa started farming here in Norton County, Kansas, in the late 20s. In the late 50s, or early 50s, he bought a brand new Farmall H, was his first brand new tractor. Um, he had been farming for a while. Horses ate some sort of weed that made him go crazy. I don't know. That's the story, I guess, and needed a tractor. And that's when it kind of all snowballed from there. That was my great grandfather. My grandfather was an auctioneer and a mail carrier and owned a lumber yard, kind of a serial entrepreneur kind of person. And so there was always just machinery coming in and out of our place. When Dad took over the farm from great grandpa in the early 70s, he and Grandpa each bought half of a 966 International. And the H and the 966 are both still on the farm. 966 is in use fairly frequently. But my dad, besides farming, I guess, kind of took over after my grandpa and wasn't an auctioneer necessarily, but would be what some would refer to as a machinery trader or equipment jockey of used machinery. And so with that, he kind of started a collection of tractors, and it just kind of snowballs from there. And I I guess, don't fall far from the tree as far as that goes. And when I came home to farm in 2019, I had already had a few smaller tractors around before that. But when I came home to farm, I really um, started picking up the pace on the collecting and the machinery trading thing at the same time. And for me, I'm lucky because the farming and machinery trading a lot of time can go hand in hand really easy.
Well, that's awesome that you guys have kind of continued that down generation to
Yeah.
generation. I know sometimes that doesn't always happen.
Yeah, my
No.
family's really interesting because there's a large generation gap between all of us. My my grandpa, my great grandpa passed it down to my dad, so the farming stuff. So there's a full generation gap in there. Um, the my grandpa was a mail carrier. He married into the farm, so he wasn't really a part of it. But he was a landowner, but not so much day to day because he had a full time jobs, I guess. And then my dad's 36 years older than me. So, in a lot of cases, it's almost like I'm taking over from my grandpa as well at times.
Mhm.
So, I'm very lucky that just, I guess I was my dad's only option as far as that goes. So, I can kind of be what I want to be.
No, that's great. Okay, you said you came back in 2019. What were you doing before you came back to the farm?
Before I came home. I went to K-State in Manhattan, Kansas, Kansas State University. Graduated in 2017 from that with a degree in biological and agricultural engineering in the machine systems option. It's a big fancy word for I have an ag engineering degree. I always thought I wanted to go to school to design farm machinery. Um, Kind of got through college. I wasn't the most model student in the world at times. Coming from a small town, going to college was a big transition for me. Hard to Sometimes making grades was hard. I was a 4.0 student in high school, was not in college, not even close. So didn't have the best grades, couldn't really get on with John Deere or Case IH or anybody like that, like I wanted to and I actually ended up in Nebraska working for Renke Irrigation. So I worked in tech support for them for 2.5 years, training people on how to build and wire new electrical center pivot systems. And then I also did a lot of over the phone troubleshooting on pivots. So I talked to people a lot in a day, and I answered a lot of really angry phone calls
I
sometimes.
can
So
imagine.
yeah.
What do you guys farm currently on your family farm?
We farm corn, beans, milo, and we do a good bit of hay, and we have cattle as well. We used to be wheat farmers, but around here you'd have to fallow wheat, so you have to take a year off, more or less. And the last 2 years, I mean, when we came into farming in 2019, you needed a crop every year to survive, just to pay the bills, and you still do. Unfortunately, we would like to do some more fallow stuff, but being a wheat farmer, seemed like we were always angry at each other in the middle of July because it was hot, something was broken, and moods are a lot better without wheat in our rotation
That's
generally.
fair. Okay, in your farming career, what's one of the biggest challenges you have overcome, like you personally?
Well, when I came home to the farm in 2019, I actually had to buy into the family farm in the middle of a bank collapse. Um, and I can't even describe what that is like. It's one of the scariest things to have to buy some family ground to make sure things keep
Mhm.
progressing. It was nothing my dad did wrong. Our local bank that dad was tied into at the time was tied into a sale barn, livestock sale barn that was check kiting cattle for cattle that didn't exist. And the bank was short millions of dollars, and they called notes on a lot of farmers around here and we were unfortunately tied in with it. So dad needed capital to basically make sure our farm stayed together.
Mhm.
So I bought a, a quarter section in 80. My in-laws bought 2 quarters of ground. God bless them. And my mom was a big part of it as well. And we kept it going. And if you don't know, the farming year of 2019 was wet. Really, really, really wet. And it all started in February and March. We had cattle going down in the mud, and dying because they just couldn't get back up. Um, and it just kept raining and it was wet and snowy all spring. Couldn't hardly get in the field to get crops in. I think we finished planting corn like June 20th that year. and beans, I want to say like the 7th or 8th of July. It was just a long, hellish year, unfortunately. Got to harvest, survived the harvest, I guess, and it started raining and snowing again. Um, None of my crops came out until 2020 of that year. So I had to figure out how to pay my land note and my operating notes and stuff like that the first year farming without any capital. We were within a week of defaulting on some stuff, and thankfully we got crops out. And then at that time, the crop markets weren't that good either, and I sold corn for $3.20 to survive. And so now today, coming from that, now it's a different world, I guess. 2023. We didn't get any rain last year, but at least I had something to market, I guess.
Yes, that's true. Okay, so I've got to ask with that story.
Mhm.
That's honestly a remarkable thing for you to do, especially when you were fairly young. I mean,
Yeah,
2 years after college to come
yeah.
back and do that. What is your advice to people in the younger generation that maybe have the same dream or want to pursue something similar?
Start small as best as possible, and if you can, try to run older machinery. Or if you can borrow machinery or work or Dad and I trade machinery for labor on some things still. I don't own a planter, I own the combines now. So we do a lot of trading of machinery for labor back and forth to make sure we can keep things moving. Easier said than done at times, but yeah, start small. I don't farm that much ground, but I guess I cash rent and own my ground, and my dad and I farm completely separate from each other, but we share machinery. Like I planted all my dad's acres this year, but except for some beans, but that's just how it works. I don't make a dime off anything in his farm ground, but that's how the world works around here.
No, I think that's some great advice. I think definitely in younger generations as well, people always want to look showy, and sometimes that's not the best thing in farming or anything in
Yeah,
life.
I like being
So,
showy with old stuff just to
mhm.
prove a point, sometimes to my own fault occasionally, but it's just I'm hard headed occasionally, so that's
That's
how it
fair.
goes.
That is fair. Okay, I know I was in Old Iron Garage, kind
Hmm.
of saw you at first on Instagram.
Hmm.
What made you decide to start your Instagram page? I know you have a very strong following. What
Yeah.
have you used that page for?
When I started, it was just kind of sharing what was going on in the farm, and that was back in like 2015, 2016, when I was still in college even. Back then we were playing with motorcycles and three-wheelers and old pickups a lot back then too. And so that was a big part of what I was sharing. When I went to work at Ranky, I got to travel the country
Mm-hmm.
quite a bit in the tech support role. So I would take pictures of machinery and stuff I would see out and about. And that's kind of what really grew that. And then when I came home to farm, we have quite a few tractors and interesting machinery around. And so that just draws a lot of attention. And then, the first year of farming, needed to make more money, started buying and selling machinery uh, with some money my wife's grandmother left us when she passed. And was able to start a business doing that, and it's just exploded. Honestly, it's its own nightmare some days, but it's wonderful too because I know people all over, and I buy and sell stuff every day. I was in Kearney, Nebraska this morning picking up some toys I bought overnight,
Okay.
so just always something going on.
So do you like, I know you had said you kind of started out with machinery, but will you now buy and sell memorabilia and smaller stuff as
I
well?
actually really started. It was funny when I started. It was hubcaps.
Okay.
I was at an auction in Garden City, Kansas, and they had a whole bunch of rare 50s and 60s Chrysler, Plymouth, Dodge cars out in the pasture that were abandoned, and all the cars were over here, but all the hubcaps and parts were over here in a separate auction ring. So I was like, it was cool to see the cars sell, but I was buying parts for the cars and putting them on eBay, and I was making $500 for a rare set of hubcaps for a Chrysler Imperial or whatever that someone needed, and it just kind of blew up from there. And that was right as I was getting ready to leave Ranky at the same time. So, and the memorabilia for a while I could house in my house. And then once I had sold enough of that, I could afford to buy a few tractors and stuff like that. And it actually more started with salvage tractors than anything because it's easy to buy a cheap, rough tractor and tear it down if you're willing to get dirty and make a few dollars that way. That's kind of how my brain worked on it.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Okay, let's get back to your collection.
Mm-hmm.
How many tractors do you have in your current collection?
I don't necessarily want to answer that straight, I guess. Um, it's less than 100, but more than 20. Let's go with that. Um, me personally, including some salvage tractors, is probably like 25-ish.
Okay.
But we have a full set of Farm All Letter series from A to W9. No diesels or supers. We have a super MTA, I guess. Few 60 series internationals, and then just a lot of other stuff sprinkled in. Clear on up to 5488 International. It's a 1984 front wheel assist. So we've got a whole range of stuff, and there's a lot of other brands of stuff too, not just International. I've got a lot of Gibson tractors, some Alice Chalmers. We like Olivers, and there's still quite a few John Deeres around here too. We do farm with some John Deere stuff. So, and then you kind of throw some combines in too as well occasionally. So
I was gonna say, I know one of the pictures that you sent us was a Massey Ferguson combine with a John Deere head on it.
Yep.
Can you kind of give us the story behind that?
That combine and I go a long way back. That was my cousin's combine, and he farmed with us until he passed in 2017.
Okay.
And really, I came home because we were short a man. It's some way that he was probably 80 when he passed, but he was farming with us every day, and that was his Massey 860 combine. And that photo, I think, was 2011 for my FFA SAE. I did soybean and corn plot on some irrigated ground. And so when his kids sold his equipment in 2020, what was left of it, um, we were having some serious problems with a John Deere combine that kept going down on us. It was my dad's, and I got the opportunity to buy my cousin's combine at his auction, and I loved that combine because it was cool. It smoked black all the time. I mean, it was just a cool combine. And I think I bought the combine and corn head for $975. Drove it 7 miles back to our farm, put a water pump in it, and did some other stuff. And actually, when the water pump went out on our John Deere that fall, I finished harvest with that Massey. We had like 80 acres left, but I got done with the old Massey that hadn't seen the field since 2012, I think. So that combine and I are really tight. And I my dad was really mad at me the day I bought that combine. I mean, mad. We don't need that junk old combine sort of situation. But it has bailed us out of a tight spot multiple times in the last 3 years. So, and it's just fun. When I get down to the last quarter of corn, I just go get that thing out, and it's usually on a Sunday, and it's late into harvest. The elevators aren't open on Sundays, and we're not in a hurry. So I run it. It's peaceful. It's loud, but it's peaceful because there's not buzzers beeping at me like newer combines.
Yeah.
And you just go back and forth, and it at 4 mile an hour with an 8-row corn head out here all day, and I love it.
That's awesome. I love that you went and bought your cousin's combine back too. I'm sure he enjoys that as well. Your dad may not, but
I've got a couple pieces of his machinery around here now. I worked pretty hard to find. He had a 560 that he bought new, and I think it's a 59 model. And he and another local gearhead back then, they were really like the horsepower. They split the exhaust manifold on the tractor, put dual pipes out the top of the hood, turned the pump up to a 660 specs, put a heavy duty TA in it, and he did a lot of terrace building with that tractor. You always knew it was him because there's two big streams of black smoke out in the field wherever he was. And so I had been searching for that tractor for a long time. Didn't really know where it went. Was driving by one day by a widow's homestead there, right? And it wasn't half a mile from one of our fields. And I look over and they drug a tractor out of the weeds. And it was my my cousin's tractor. And I just couldn't believe it. So I went and found her and was like, what do you want for that tractor? She said, well, it's an old junker. And I said, you got to realize this tractor is really important. Like it was my cousin's tractor, and she was tickled to sell it to me, and I was tickled to have it back. And I'm actually in the process of turning it into an antique tractor puller.
Oh, that's
just
awesome.
because that's what he would like. My cousin was a big horsepower guy, so that just seems like the right thing to do.
Well, that's awesome. That's a great story, and that's great to share too with people when you take it somewhere. So it's great that you can preserve the history of that tractor too. Okay, what was the first tractor that you bought?
First tractor I bought, I believe Dad and I were in Byers, Colorado, and I would have been 10 or 11. At a consignment sale, they had a Farmall 140 out there. It'd be an IH 140 actually going by the year, but it had a International 1000 single arm loader on it, and it had a fast hitch on it, and there was a line of single point fast hitch equipment to go with it, and that was one of the very first ones I bought myself, and it's still around here. We play with it pretty frequent. The little single arm loader always draws a lot of attention because people just they didn't make that. I'm like, yeah, okay. Just it's hard to argue with old men some
Yeah.
days.
Yeah. I'm sure that, yeah, I'm sure you get that a lot when you
Yeah,
have that out and you're messing with it.
yeah.
All right, now you went to Red Power Roundup. Do you
Mhm.
attend other shows throughout the year?
Where I live out here in Western Kansas, there aren't a ton of shows to get to. I go to the uh, Old Settlers Day in Smith Center, Kansas, which is about an hour east of here. Last year they featured International Harvester, so I took a 1468 International that we found last year and Cub Cadet and another little three-wheeler to show off. There used to be a tractor show right here in Almena where I grew up, and that was one of the reasons that really got me into the old tractor stuff a lot when I was a kid with some of my mentors. But yeah, I do some antique tractor pulling or just some unsanctioned tractor pulling
Mhm.
out here in Western Kansas when we get the opportunity. I get to one south of Hays, Kansas, and another one in Garden City, Kansas. Right now, my pulling tractor is just a 706 International that the RPMs are turned up a lot. And
I bet.
it's a good tractor. It's competitive, but there aren't a lot of us, and that's just part of it. And most guys don't have anything big or fancy or turned up a lot. So you can be pretty competitive out here if you have something that just runs a lot of times. So
Do you have any videos of that?
yeah, I do. I have a couple of videos from the one at Shin Shin south of Hayes last year and this year. I think it's
You'll
a fun
have.
tractor. It's just a narrow front 706 with big front tires and clamshell fenders with a lot of weight hung off of it. And it just it if you ever listen to the video of it, it's turning more RPM than it's supposed to.
Yeah,
Let's think about out here is there aren't very many rules. I like
yeah.
to tell people there it's kind of like the Wild West when it comes to farming and just everything out here because you can just kind of get away with whatever you want.
Well, that's not always a bad thing, but it can be a
Yeah.
bad thing. I'm gonna kind of just ask you some general questions too
Yep.
here and there. If money wasn't an issue, what would you do with your time?
I'd probably be at auctions all the time. I love farm auctions. I have been going to auctions since I was itty bitty. With my grandpa being an auctioneer, and he wasn't even a practicing auctioneer when I was a little kid, but we went with him all the time. And my dad was always taking me to sales back then too, when he was buying a lot of used machinery. And so, I would be everywhere. Mecum had an auction. I would be everywhere. I mean, if Almonds had something really cool, I'd be there. Gerard's in South Dakota. I love bidding on their memorabilia auctions. I would be at an auction or watching an auction somewhere every day of the week if I could be, because I that is so much fun. I love interacting with different auctioneers and hearing different chants, and just the people is one of my favorite things. I love interacting with the people. You learn more there some days than you do anywhere else.
Yes, live auctions are one of my favorite things
Yeah,
too. Like you said, it's just a great event for everybody to get together and kind of
yeah. And
share.
I have so many auctioneers out here that I'm great friends with that I have dealt with for years, and it's just something I never get tired of going to see them. I always get called out in the crowd because I'm a big 6'4" redhead that I can't hide in a crowd. And I'm also bidding generally. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, that's funny. It is always fun because all auctioneers definitely have their own personalities, so it's
Yeah.
fun to see how they interact with people too. Okay, is there a dream show that you know of that you would like to go to someday?
Yeah, I would love to go to Half Century of Progress.
Mhm.
Um, it's not a great time of year for me necessarily, but sometimes you have to make time. And honestly, I've never pulled a plow before, so
Really?
it's just something you don't see around here. Actually, I ran a plow once. It was a five bottom rollover behind a 4166 International of my friends. And then he traded me the plow and the tractor about 2 weeks later for something else I had. So just kind of funny the way the world works out on
It
that sort of
is,
thing. And then I
yes.
sold the plow and we kept the tractor. But
Mhm.
I've never really plowed very much before and wouldn't even know how to set a plow. But I kind of actually would rather take a combine to that
Mhm.
But I haven't got the combine I want for that yet, if that
Okay.
makes sense. So that's that's one show I would love to go see.
Do you care if we ask what is the combine?
Yeah, no, and that's easy. I want a Massey Ferguson 300 diesel combine
Okay.
with a 3-row corn head. Mostly because it can just drive upon a trailer and be legal width,
Mhm.
without any options, without any issues. Just drive it
Yeah,
on, chain it down, and go. That's just kind of what I'm looking for. Not easy to find in Western Kansas
I bet not.
because most that era, most guys were 6 rows, 6-row narrow or 4-row wide. So that combine, there just aren't any out here. So got to
Yes,
go
I can
east.
imagine. Well, I hope you find one day.
Yeah,
And we do enjoy going past Century of Progress, so
yeah,
maybe we'll be there when you get there.
yeah.
Okay. What did your 15-year-old self think you would be doing now?
Honestly, I thought I'd be designing farm machinery for somebody like Case IH or AGCO, and that's all right. I went to school for 5 years, took an extra lap, sort of deal, to make all that happen. But the world works out interestingly, and I'm probably a lot happier and in a better mood doing this than I would be being an engineer. I have quite a few friends that are in AGCO and Case IH and John Deere and stuff like that. And some days my life looks pretty good compared
Yeah.
to a desk job or whatever else they're doing. So even
Mhm.
if some of those guys are field test guys too, but that's a hard job.
Yes. No, I'd say it worked out well for you so far, so that's great. Okay, whether you have it yourself or not, what is your favorite tractor?
Um, I have three favorite tractors. The first one is my 1206 Wheatland or standard that I found this last January. I'd wanted a 1206 Wheatland on big rubber forever. Finally found this one about 2 years ago, and it took a year to get it bought. It's a cool tractor. It is so much fun to play with and drive. And at Red Power Roundup, it got a lot of attention just
I bet.
because it was the only one there. It really was the only one there, and it's all original paint, weathered like it was spent its life in Western Kansas, and that's just the way I like it. The other tractor is a 5488 front wheel assist International. Mine is a 1984 model. Um, and I love it because it's just the end of an era, and I get to spend a lot of hours in that tractor in the spring doing tillage. I put 200, not this year. This year I probably put 50 hours on it, but last year doing tillage and everything else, we put 200 hours on that tractor. So I got some serious seat time, and I'm pretty comfortable in that tractor. And then the last one is a 67 706 German diesel, that we have. My wife and I actually bought it together right after we got married.
Mhm.
Pretty soon, we actually used some of our wedding money to buy that tractor, and it was actually a local tractor to Norton County its whole life. A neighbor of ours, dad, bought it new in '67 at Row Implement in Norton, Kansas, and it had just always been around there. And he has kind of switched to all John Deere equipment and didn't really want it around anymore. And we went and bought it with cash wedding money, and we use it still. I run a New Holland stack liner with it and some other stuff. It's one of those tractors that you never get rid of, and it's a local tractor, and it's got a great story with
Yeah.
it too.
Definitely has a great story. I do really enjoy my grandfather-in-law. Actually, he was an international dealer, him and his brother, when he was
Mhm.
younger. And he always gives me crap because I grew up on a farm that was all John Deere.
Mhm.
My grandpa always collected John Deere equipment, always ran John Deere equipment, so
Mhm.
he always has to give me crap. But I do really love the international, like 1206s, 806,
Mhm.
706. I
Yeah.
just think those are awesome
Yeah,
tractors.
that's
So
my favorite era of farm machinery is the '60s and early '70s international stuff. So I get it. I do.
yeah,
There's a lot of that around here. It just keeps multiplying,
yeah.
honestly. So,
That's awesome though. Okay, so do you have a dream tractor or do you already own the dream
um,
tractor?
my dream tractor was a 5488 front wheel assist international. I got really, really lucky on a Sunday evening in 2020. Is mid-May, and I needed something to pull baler with, honestly, at the time, and was scrolling through Tractor House, and there's a 5488 front wheel assist for sale in Goodland, Kansas, which is an hour and a half west of here.
Mhm.
We loaded up Monday morning and went out there, and I bought it and had it on a trailer and brought it home. And it's got like 14,000 hours on it. It's got a lot of hours. but it had had a repaint that at some point in time has passed. So it looks really good, and I redid the whole cab interior, and it's just a great tractor to drive. My other dream tractor, and it's going to be hard to get because it's really specific. Um, my neighbor who lives actually lives across the street from me. He worked for my grandpa way back when too, when my grandpa had a lumber yard. He knew in 1970 got a 1456 Gold Demo International
Oh, that's
on
awesome.
big rubber with a cab. And we've been trying to track that tractor down for a while. And that's kind of the dream right now is to get a hold of that one. I'd also kind of like a 786 or 3088 International. Those aren't so hard to find though. If I, have the money someday, I can go get one of those. But sometimes it's more fun to hunt for something some days. And when you find it, it's pretty rewarding. So
I was gonna say, yes, there's definitely a reward once you do find what you're looking for, so that's great. Okay, what is something that you spend time doing no matter what?
I will honestly take time out of the day at any point in time to work on tractors or talk to somebody about tractors and one of the little thing, I have a little daughter and I will honestly just take any time I can to stop and hang out with her because she's only little for so long and I'm lucky because my wife works from home for her family business as well. So we get to spend a lot of time together and just never get tired of it. So
Well, that's great. That is good. Okay, I know we kind of touched on this with farming, but in general, in like the hobby, how do you see the younger generation getting involved?
that's kind of there's two minds of thinking to that. Um, there's a lot of there are young guys involved in the hobby. They're few and far between out here. I have some great friends in Western Kansas and Nebraska that are a part of the hobby. And some days it's hard to have friends doing this. And the hardest part is sometimes getting the old guys to let you be a part of it. The hobby is not dying at all. There's a lot of us 20, 30, 40, even 50-year olds that are really getting busy in it nowadays. So I don't see that dying, but there's just less of us. And my biggest thing is out here, a lot of my mentors have died, and so that's been hard for that sort of thing too. Just you got to kind of just keep going, and
Mhm.
and sometimes you got to deal with a hard-headed old man and make
Yes, you
sure that
do.
they know you're going to be around and not go anywhere. You just have to
Yes.
be assertive, and sometimes they're mean, but they want you to be mean back. And a lot of people don't quite realize that, I guess. They get their feelings hurt and give up. Um, I don't know. I guess that's probably not the right perspective, but it's true.
Sometimes I feel like though, like you said, I think they want you to almost prove yourself.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you can't stand up to them, then they're not going to feel like you're worth taking the time.
Mhm.
In addition to that, do you see a shift in the younger generation as far of which era of tractors they get involved with?
There are some pretty guys that are really into the letter series farm-alls and the two-cylinder John Deeres like that are my age. It seems like there's more of us that are really into the muscle tractor era,
I
the
agree
new
with
gen
that.
John Deeres and the '06, '56, and '66 series internationals. Those are really caught. There's a lot of us doing it. But there's nothing wrong with starting with a farm-all letter series or a two-cylinder at all. That's kind of what I, grew up with working on. You just got to start with something,
You do,
and you
yep.
can build from nothing if need be. There's plenty of junk old tractors out there to work on. Trust me. I
Yes.
turned down more letter series farm-alls in a day because I just don't want to deal with them because I could have hundreds of them.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. But I do agree with you. I feel like I see more of the younger generations getting more involved in the muscle era
Mhm.
than anything else. Okay, so I know in addition to tractors, you also obviously, if we look behind you, you collect signs. Do you
Yep.
also do toys, memorabilia? What all do you have?
I'll pretty much touch anything ag related if possible. I have quite a few toys, and I buy and sell a lot of toys in the winter months just because farming slowed down. Can't necessarily do that when there's a foot of snow on the ground some years. So I have a pretty good collection of toys, mostly international, but a lot of other stuff. Memorabilia and literature, I have quite a bit of that. And then, as you can see, there's a lot of signs behind you. My main focus as far as memorabilia is stuff I keep. is international and anything local advertising, if that makes sense. Northwest Kansas, Western Kansas dealers, and Nebraska, because I'm 8 miles from Nebraska, so we cross the state line a lot. I work with a lot of dealers there, so I collect quite a bit of that. And then irrigation equipment, signs as well, and memorabilia, just because I worked for Ranke for a couple years out of college. And I grew up laying out a lot of irrigation pipe for flood irrigation in corn and beans. So it's just kind of one of those things that's just stuck in my brain, I guess.
Is there anything you find easier to find when it comes to collecting those things? Like, are toys normally something that's more readily available?
Yeah, the internet's made that a lot better than it used to be. I can always go to Gerard's or Almonds or somewhere and bid on a toy auction at least once a week, generally. So toys are pretty accessible generally. I go to a lot of auctions and when it's that time of year for that. There's just not because there's always another old man, unfortunately, has passed away, and they are selling his collection. So you just go buy some more toys and put them on my website and resell them and keep what I want. That's the nice thing about being a reseller. Sometimes I can make the toys I keep stay around for free, if that makes sense, and then sell off other pieces that I have acquired. So
no, that's a great way to do it too.
it's good collateral occasionally too. My banker is a big toy collector as well, and he likes international harvester toys. So not that I bribe my banker with fancy international harvester toys, but it's nice to have a connection there, and it's fun to walk into his office and there's just shelves of toys that are stuff, and I probably supplied 25 to 50% of them, depending on the rotating stock in there. So it's just kind of a funny world.
It is. It is a small world. It is really crazy. Okay, is there anything like you specifically, memorabilia or toy wise, are like really looking for and you really want to add it to your collection?
No, not really. It's just kind of whatever strikes my fancy some days. Um, I've got a lot of really cool signs that I've been lucky enough to buy over the last 3 years, predominantly international. But my biggest thing is I would like to find some of the local dealership signs. That's the ones that are tough, and who knows if they even exist. But the guy can try, I guess. And so we're always searching for those. I know where some of the John Deere dealership signs are from the local dealers, but I don't know where the international ones are, and we've been trying to get a hold of those the last few years, and someday maybe.
No, that's awesome. I really think it's cool when people try to collect things that are local to them.
Yeah,
okay.
we were lucky enough to have some good dealers back in the day, and we worked with them. So that's just the kind of stuff that we like, I guess.
No, that's awesome. All right, let's do a little tour. Can you show us some of the stuff you got?
Yeah. Okay, so like behind me is a big wall of stuff. There's a sign up there from Red Cloud, Nebraska, I think is the dealership there. Ely's, Roll Up International Paint 'em Red, like corrugated cardboard, some stuff like that. That big Ford sign actually came from my mentor's collection. I was lucky enough when he passed away, his kids let me come pick out a few things, and I've actually got a McCormick Gearing sign from his stuff as well. He was a big Farm All Letter Series guy, was really active in the Kansas IH Collectors Association, so it's just fun to have that sort of stuff. I'm a big thermometer guy, probably because I can put a lot of them on a wall, if that makes sense. So I have a lot of international thermometers from Kansas and Nebraska and other places. Have one from Tuskegee, Alabama, as well that I think is really cool, just because of the Tuskegee Airmen sort of things. My dad had an old toolbox that was full of bumper stickers from, oh, I don't know back when, but there's a lot of catchy ones up there. I'll Stop for Farm Sales. Without Farmers, Bellyaches Become Real, and some other good ones. If you eat, you're involved in agriculture. Keep screwing the farmer, and you won't get bread. And I actually came in with an 856 International a while back that had a bunch of bumper stickers like that stuck to it. And I actually swapped the sheet metal off that tractor with another one so I could keep the sheet metal just because why let it go? This wall over here, that Firestone sign was actually in my maternal grandfather's and great grandfather's shed for years, hanging up in the rafters. And when the shed came down, I just kind of made sure it didn't go missing, sort of situation. Big Oliver up there. There's some really cool Heston advertising prints there. Heston stuff isn't that desirable necessarily, but it had international tractors and uh, stuff hooked onto it, so I thought that was really cool. I have this is in more kind of just more thermometers, and that door's steel, so I have all sorts of magnets and stuff to it from all sorts of dealerships.
How old are these thermometers? Do you know if
Most of
any
them
of
are from the
them?
50s and 60s, generally, sometimes 40s. Uh, those mirrors there are from that one's from Oxford, Nebraska, which is right across the state line if you can see it. But the one with the dog on it and one other one next to it are both from Van Sura Implement, which were our John Deere dealers in Norton, Kansas in the 50s. So that one's kind of cool. I have a lot of oil cans, international oil cans and stuff as well. A lot of about 50% of those that are up there came out of an old building at our farm. So just kind of cleared them up and cleaned them and put them on display. Kind of a
That's
funny
awesome.
deal. But I love oil cans for some reason. They're just way different. That John Deere one there is pretty cool from Pretty Prairie, Kansas, down. That's on the southern border of Kansas. Picked that up from my friends at Brown Auction in Greensburg on their winter or spring fling or winter auction last year, I think. Just IH therm, IH neon clock, kind of cool. That McCormick Deering service one up there above the door, if I can get my aim right, maybe, came from one of my mentors' collection as well.
Those signs are
So
cool. I like
the
those ones.
porcelain is not perfect, but I didn't really care. Just to have something from him was awesome. And then the sign above it is from Spearville, Kansas, which is down near Dodge City. So it's kind of a local dealership. My wife's from the Dodge City area, so just kind of cool. Big I-8 sign there on the wall. A friend of mine in Alma, Nebraska had that. The Uptime service plastic blow molded signs. There's quite a few of those out there. There was a lot of them for sale at Red Power Roundup. Like 3 or 4 guys had those for sale.
Was there?
It was funny, and the prices on them were hilarious. And I'm like, oh, I bought mine at a toy auction for $90 like 5 years ago. That's great.
Yep.
The banner up there in the corner with the 706 grill on it, that's a pretty hard to find banner in itself. The banners and just like paper stuff didn't survive that era very well.
Yes.
So I've kind of tried to get as much of that as possible. And I don't think
Looks like
any
it's in good condition
yeah, and it
too.
really is. I paid pretty well for that, but I kind of wanted it too.
Yeah.
No garage really, if you're an IH guy, is complete without an International Harvester beer fridge,
This
really.
is true.
So, and then a great talk. Sarah Tomac had a great talk at Red Power Roundup about the history of IH fridges and stuff. So, just funny the way that sort of works.
Uh-huh.
I have a collection of John Deere chainsaws as well, just for fun. I have anything from the smallest John Deere chainsaw up to the big 2-cylinder John Deere chainsaw that's really, there aren't very many in existence, but those are really cool.
Do they run?
Most of them actually, I have had them running and then drain the gas and put them on the shelf. The only one that I've never been able to get run is actually the 2-cylinder, unfortunately, because the ignition coils go bad on them and the parts are not available to fix them. And so you kind of do whatever you got to do. I have a mud flap thing too, I guess. Kansas wheat country mud flaps were used to be a big deal around here in the Nebraska ones as well. And I probably have 4 or 5 sets of those Kansas wheat country ones that come in on pickups or whatever, and you just kind of buy them just for whatever. I don't know if you can see it. The sign in the windows from Dighton, Kansas, which is another dealer about 2 hours south of here. There's a big white sign up. I'll shut my garage door. Actually, there's some signs actually above my garage door, which might be irresponsible, but it works.
I like all the DeKalb signs that you have too. Those are pretty cool as well.
There's a big Pioneer sign right there that a friend of mine and down my Wichita had. Big DeKalb sign.
Is that DeKalb sign wooden or what is that?
Yeah, that's a wooden sign. My wife found that for me in an antique store in Council Grove, Kansas, I think.
Okay.
And she knows what I like, so we got a lot of that stuff that way. But international tools, hydraulic headquarters there. I have a Farmall regular that was a mentor of mine's tractor, and that's the storyboard of when they restored it. kind of cool. Decal chicks, just kind of different. That one came from a Wilkie's Matthews auction in Wisconsin a couple years ago. I was up there buying some stuff, and that was kind of just something I came home with. It was about the most reasonable thing I could buy that day that wasn't $20,000. That was some really, really high caliber stuff, and I didn't have the money at the time to buy that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got a Massey Ferguson snowmobile, ski whiz snowmobile right there. I've kind of been tinkering with. Those are really hard to find, Massey snowmobiles in general. That one was actually sold new at Radke Implement in Plainville, Kansas, about 45 miles from here, which was kind of our local Massey dealer when the Massey dealer in my hometown closed. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, that's kind of what's, I guess, actually up above my garage door. There's a rendering company sign. It's kind of funny. Crustbuster and Sunflower are both Kansas manufacturing companies. So gotta love that stuff. And then the big old NC Plus sold here sign. Just got a lot of signs. The toy collection is housed in the basement of my house. And sometimes some of it's in like a ring around my living room, and it's a little harder to show that sort of stuff off.
So, no, that's awesome. I'd say you're off to a good start with your collection.
Yeah, for a guy that hasn't been doing it very long, I've hoarded a lot of stuff away.
Yes.
But it's nice when you can resell some stuff. My favorite tractor, it got unloaded at my house after Red Power Roundup, kind of oddly enough, just because that's the way things work. But that's my 66 1206 Wheatland.
That's awesome.
I found it a friend of mine found it in a field near Ulysses, Kansas, in the very southwest corner of Colorado, or Kansas, almost in Colorado. He'd known about it about 5 years, and he finally told me about it about 2 years ago. And it took a while to get it nailed down, but we got it figured out. Funny story was I actually went down there right before the first of the year to buy this tractor, and he changed his mind. He decided he was going to keep it.
Oh, no.
And I had a pile of cash on me, just whatever. So, but he wouldn't let it go, so I didn't want to come home empty, because that's like a sin to me when you're buying and selling machinery to come home empty. Yeah. But another friend of mine, south of Garden City, Kansas, had that 81 Dodge pickup, and I was looking it over. It's pretty solid, low miles, no rust. Western Kansas, high quality. We're lucky we don't rust things out around here.
Yes.
And it was sold new in Norton, Kansas, 15 miles west of me.
Wow.
So, and for me, and that's the closest Dodge dealer to us ever, and we bought a lot of pickups there back in the day. So it didn't take very long for him to convince me to buy.
I bet not.
So we'll walk over here. Yeah, the 1206, it's original paint, I guess. Spent a lot of time getting weathered by the Western Kansas sun, but it ran and drove on the trailer when I picked it up, but the turbo was out of it, so I had to put a turbo in it. It's got big 24.5, 32 rear tires on it. Kind of your typical Western Kansas Wheatland. I find a lot of 806s that kind of look like this, not so many 1206s. No 3-point, does have dual PTO, but it's a fun, big, and it gets a lot of attention just because of how big it is.
So
we have a 1468 V8 too, but I prefer this one.
Do you like to keep things original, or do you restore things?
I am a big original guy. I'm not a shiny tractor person because I never want to use them. Is one of my big faults, I guess. So my 1468 V8 that we have, and I can't show it here because it's at the farm, but a friend of mine 2 years ago, now we're friends, called me and wanted to sell me a 1468 he had found or bought, and he'd had it for a year or two at that point in time, but didn't have time to get to it, and he had bought it off the original owner, which was a woman, and it had pretty much been her personal tractor, had a cab on it, but had been shedded its whole life. Had 4,000, now it has 4,199 hours on it, I think, or something like that. Pretty low hour tractor. One of the nicest old international tractors I have ever seen. The paint is immaculate on it. I shared some photos of it with you guys. It's just a great old tractor, and it gets at Red Power Roundup. Really looking at that thing because I mean, as far as there's nicer original paint tractors out there, but 1468's number one, hard to find them original. Most guys dolled them up and put exhaust pipes and stuff like that on them. This one has the original mufflers on it still, original seat, original back tires. It's just a cool tractor, and it's just kind of preserved well. I cleaned it and detailed it and got it to shine with the original paint, but it's not, it's just a good old original tractor. Then my obsession that kind of got me through college, we used it to kind of buy and sell three-wheelers and motorcycles and stuff. For beer money, we buy and sell them, and just so we could go to the bars.
Yeah.
And so I've had every model of Honda three-wheeler over the years. I've had every size and model ever made. But these two little red Hondas I have right there are two that I kept around. Both of them, I believe, are from the original owners. Both very, very nice, well kept by old men, and just very lucky to have found something that nice and that good of a specimen. I'm pretty picky for keeping things original, I guess, to a fault some days. I just really, when I go to a tractor show and see a restored tractor that the decals aren't on right, or the paint's the wrong shade or something like that, I critique a little too much, I guess. So
I get that though. I mean, it's great to preserve the actual history behind these.
And it's interesting now that I've had a 1468 that is about as good as it comes for original stuff for me. It's hard to look at other tractors some days because you can see every detail that's wrong. Because that 1468, just everything's so original on it. It's a good specimen for if you're working on something else to compare to, if that makes any sense.
Yes. And I was just going to ask you to share with everybody, where can they find you or find what you're selling?
Yeah, my website is territorialtrading.com. That's where all my stuff that's where most of the memorabilia and toys are at, I guess. Occasionally there's some tractors up there. Tractors come and go around here pretty fast some days, so I don't always get them up there. I had a 6030 I sold for a friend of mine last week, for 2 weeks ago, and is only for sale for 4 hours. So when things are good, they sell, and that's just how it is. I don't have time to waste a lot of time pricing things too high. Sometimes it's nice to be realistic and move things. On my social media stuff, my handle is TMontyIH on pretty much everything: Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. Facebook is just Tyler Montgomery. And that's pretty much where you can find me. I think I've got about every social media locked down with my TMontyIH at this point in time. So.
Well, awesome. Well, we appreciate you coming on today.
Yep.
And I enjoyed having you show us everything. And if you'd ever want to do it again, maybe we could walk through your tractor collection.
Yeah, for sure. If I ever get cell phone service at our farm.
Well, that's fair. That's a problem.
Sometimes that's a problem. When you live in the middle of nowhere,
you
just never know.
No, you don't. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yep, thank you.
You can find all the source material for our episodes on our website, oldirongarage.com. We encourage everyone to join us on Old Iron Garage and connect with other collectors. Again, we would like to thank Tyler for joining us today. We really enjoyed looking at his collection and learning about his family ties to international. Don't forget to give him a follow on social media. You can also submit collection photos to info@oldirongarage.com to be featured at the end of our episodes. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or would like to join us on a future episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.